The rain had been tapping against our apartment windows for hours, a soft, restless rhythm that felt like it was trying to tell me something I wasn't ready to hear. The city outside was blurred into streaks of silver and gold, streetlights melting into reflections on the wet pavement. Inside, everything felt quieter than usual. Too quiet. I was sitting on the edge of the couch, my laptop balanced on my knees, pretending to work while my mind wandered back to him, Ethan. My roommate. My accidental constant. The person who somehow filled every corner of this small apartment with his presence, even when he wasn't in the room. He was late. That wasn't unusual. Ethan had a habit of losing track of time, of letting conversations and moments stretch longer than they were supposed to. But tonight, something about his absence felt heavier. The clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing minute, each sound echoing in my chest like a warning. I tried to shake the feeling off. This was just another night. Another routine evening in a place we both pretended was temporary. The smell of leftover coffee still lingered in the air, mixing with the faint scent of his cologne that clung to the hallway like a ghost of him. I hated how much comfort I found in that. My phone buzzed. For a split second, my heart jumped, hope rushing in before I could stop it. But it wasn't Ethan, just a notification from some app I didn't remember downloading. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Why did I care this much? I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows from passing cars crawl across it like slow-moving thoughts I couldn't escape. Living with Ethan had always felt like walking a thin line between normal and something dangerously close to forbidden. We joked. We argued. We shared meals and late-night confessions. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, our eyes would meet and linger just a second too long. And in that second, everything felt like it could change. The front door finally clicked open. I didn't turn around right away. I listened instead, the soft thud of his shoes by the door, the familiar shuffle of his jacket being tossed onto the chair. My pulse picked up, betraying me. "Hey," he said, his voice tired but warm, like he was glad to be back here. "With me." "Hey," I replied, keeping my tone casual, even though my thoughts were anything but. He walked past me toward the kitchen, and for a moment, I caught his reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. His hair was damp from the rain, his eyes a little distant, like he was carrying something he hadn't decided to share yet. I wanted to ask where he'd been. I wanted to ask what was on his mind. Instead, I stayed quiet, watching the space between us fill with unspoken questions. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the windows like it was counting down to something. And in the back of my mind, a dangerous thought whispered. What if tonight wasn't just another night at all? The morning arrived quietly, the kind of quiet that felt borrowed from a dream you didn't want to wake up from. Pale sunlight slipped through the thin curtains in our living room, painting soft rectangles across the floor. Dust particles floated in the air like tiny, suspended stars. Everything looked peaceful, almost innocent, as if the night before hadn't left that strange, restless echo inside my chest. Ethan's door was still closed. That, too, wasn't unusual. He liked to sleep in on his days off. But today, the silence behind that door felt different. He usually emerged early, barefoot, hair sticking up in every direction, complaining about how the coffee never tasted right unless he made it himself. Today, there was nothing. No footsteps. No groan of the kettle. Just the hum of the fridge and the distant sound of traffic outside. I stood in the kitchen, mug in hand, staring at the dark surface of my coffee like it might give me answers. Relax, I told myself. You're overthinking. You always do. But the feeling didn't fade. I carried my mug back to the couch and sank into my usual spot. The fabric still held the faint warmth of where Ethan had sat the night before. My chest tightened at the thought, and I hated myself for noticing something so small. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through messages I didn't really care about, anything to keep my mind from wandering back to him. A soft sound broke the quiet. At first, I thought it was the building settling, one of those random creaks that old apartments make. But then it came again. A faint, muffled noise, like something shifting behind a wall. I looked toward Ethan's door. My heart started to beat a little faster. Ethan, I called out, my voice low, testing the air. No answer. I stood up slowly, every step feeling louder than it should have. The hallway seemed longer than usual, the light dimmer. I stopped a few feet from his door, my hand hovering in the air, unsure whether I should knock or just walk away and pretend I hadn't heard anything at all. "What are you doing?" I scolded myself. "You're acting like this means something." I knocked. There was a pause, just long enough for doubt to creep in. Then the door opened. Ethan stood there, hair messier than usual, eyes still heavy with sleep. He was wearing an old t-shirt that hung loose on his frame, something I recognized as mine. My breath caught before I could stop it. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Hey," I replied, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. Too close. We lingered there for a second, neither of us moving, like the hallway itself was holding its breath. "Did I wake you?" I asked, even though it was obvious. He shook his head. "No, I was already up. Just thinking." Thinking about what? The question stayed in my head, unspoken. Instead, I stepped back, giving him space. I made coffee. His face softened at that, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're a lifesaver." We walked back to the kitchen together, our shoulders almost brushing. Almost. That tiny space between us felt charged, like a wire humming with electricity. He poured himself a cup and leaned against the counter, watching me in a way that made my skin prickle. "You okay?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" He shrugged. "You just seem off. Since last night." I looked away, pretending to be fascinated by the way the coffee swirled in my mug. "I could say the same about you. You came in late. You were quiet." He laughed softly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Guess we both had a night." Another pause. Another unspoken thing hanging between us. We took our mugs to the small dining table by the window. Outside, the clouds were breaking apart, patches of blue peeking through like the sky was trying to decide whether to clear or stay stormy. It felt like a reflection of what was happening inside me. Ethan tapped his fingers against his cup, a nervous habit I'd noticed months ago but never mentioned. "So," he said, "I might be going out tonight." My chest tightened. "Oh, yeah. A friend invited me to this thing." "Not sure yet." I nodded, even though I hadn't asked. "Sounds fun." But the word fun felt hollow in my mouth. The idea of him leaving, of the apartment going quiet again, stirred something uncomfortable inside me. I didn't want to admit what it was. Jealousy, fear, something else entirely. We sat there in a strange, fragile silence, the kind that feels like it could shatter if you breathe too hard. Later, I retreated to my room, trying to focus on work. My laptop glowed in front of me, lines of text blurring together as my thoughts drifted back to the kitchen, to the way Ethan had looked at me, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. A sudden knock on my door made me jump. "Yeah," I called. Ethan peeked in. "You got a minute?" "Sure." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The room felt smaller with him in it. Warmer. He leaned against my desk, arms crossed, eyes scanning the posters on my wall like he was buying time. "I didn't mean to make things weird earlier," he said. "You didn't," I replied, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. He sighed. I've been thinking a lot lately. About us. About this place." My pulse quickened. "What about it?" He hesitated, his gaze finally meeting mine. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Uncertainty, maybe. Or courage. "Do you ever feel like we're standing on the edge of something?" He asked quietly, like one wrong step and everything changes. My breath caught. All the things I'd been pretending not to feel rose up at once, pressing against my chest. I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I admitted. "Sometimes." He nodded, like that was the answer he'd been waiting for. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air between us felt thick, heavy with possibilities neither of us dared to name. Then his phone buzzed. The sound cut through the moment like a knife. Ethan glanced at the screen, his expression shifting. "That's my friend. About tonight." I forced a smile. "You should go. Have fun." He looked at me for a long second, like he was trying to read something on my face. Then he stepped back. "I'll see you later." As he left, the door clicking softly behind him, I sank onto my bed, staring at the ceiling. The apartment felt quieter than ever. And the thought that kept circling in my mind, refusing to let go, was this. What if tonight, whatever waited for Ethan out there, wasn't the only thing about to change? The sun had already dipped behind the buildings by the time Ethan came back. The apartment was washed in a dim, amber glow from the streetlights outside, shadows stretching across the walls like long fingers. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch a show I hadn't followed for the last 3 episodes. Every few seconds, my eyes flicked to the door. When the lock finally turned, my heart jumped. He stepped inside slowly, like he wasn't sure whether he wanted to be here or somewhere else entirely. His jacket was slung over his shoulder, his hair still slightly damp from the mist in the air outside. He looked different, not in a way I could describe easily. Just different. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied, trying to sound casual, even though my chest felt tight. He kicked off his shoes and stood there for a moment, scanning the room like he was seeing it for the first time. "It's quiet in here." "Yeah." I didn't feel like turning anything on. He nodded and walked toward the kitchen, setting his jacket down. I followed, drawn by something I couldn't name. "So," I said, leaning against the counter, "how was it?" He hesitated. "Weird." "Weird how?" He opened the fridge, stared inside without really looking, then closed it again. "You ever go somewhere and realize you don't actually want to be there?" "All the time," I thought. But I didn't say it. "I kept thinking about this place," he continued. "About you." My stomach flipped. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged, but his eyes didn't leave the floor. "Because it feels safe. And I don't know if I'm ready to mess that up." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and loaded. My mind raced, trying to figure out what he meant, what he wasn't saying. "Mess it up how?" I pressed. He looked up then, really looked at me. There was something raw in his expression, something unguarded. "You ever feel like you're lying just by staying quiet?" My breath caught. "Yeah, me too." We stood there, the hum of the fridge the only sound filling the space. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands tingling at my sides. "Come sit," I said, gesturing toward the couch. We sat down, closer than usual, our knees almost touching. Almost. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit that always showed up when he was about to say something hard. "I didn't go out tonight just to hang out," he admitted. "I went because someone asked me out." The words hit me harder than I expected. "Oh," I said, forcing a smile that didn't feel real. "That's nice." "It wasn't," he replied quickly. "I left." "Why?" He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "Because the whole time, I kept thinking about you sitting here, probably pretending you don't care that I'm gone." My chest tightened. "You don't know that." "I kind of do," he said. Silence fell again, thick and heavy. "I don't want to be the guy who makes things complicated," he continued. "I don't want to ruin what we have. But I also don't want to keep pretending I don't feel something when I do." My heart pounded. "Ethan." He held up a hand, stopping me. "Just listen, please." I nodded. "I don't know what this is," he said. "I don't know what it means. I just know that when I think about leaving this place for good, or you not being in my life anymore, it feels wrong. Like I'd be losing something I haven't even admitted I have." His words sank into me, stirring up everything I'd been pushing down for months. I looked away, my throat tight. "You think I don't feel the same way?" He went still. "I've been walking on this line forever," I continued, my voice quieter now. "Telling myself it's just friendship. That I'm imagining things. That wanting more would just make everything messy." He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "And if it already is messy?" Our eyes met. The space between us felt charged, like the air before a storm. My mind screamed at me to stop, to pull back, to say something safe. But my body didn't listen. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Because once you say it out loud, you can't take it back." "I know," he said. "That's what's been keeping me up." He reached out, hesitating for just a second before his hand brushed mine. The contact was light, almost accidental, but it sent a jolt through me. Neither of us pulled away. The room felt too small, too quiet. I could hear his breathing, slow and uneven, matching my own. "This is a bad idea," I murmured. "Probably," he agreed. "But you're not letting go. Neither are you." Time seemed to stretch, the moment suspended like it might never end. My thoughts raced, about what this would mean, about how everything would change, about the risk of losing him entirely if we crossed this line. Ethan leaned in, stopping just inches from my face. "Tell me to stop," he said softly. "And I will." I searched his eyes, looking for certainty, for doubt, for anything that would make this easier. I found only the same fear and longing I felt in my own chest. "I don't want to," I whispered. His breath hitched. For a split second, everything else faded away, the apartment, the city outside, the future we didn't understand. There was just this, just us, balanced on the edge of something neither of us knew how to name. Then, before either of us could move closer, a loud knock echoed through the apartment door. We both jumped back, like we'd been caught doing something we weren't supposed to. Ethan stood up, running a hand through his hair. "What the hell?" The knock came again, louder this time. I stared at the door, my heart racing, my mind spinning with questions. Who would be here this late? And why now? Ethan looked at me, his expression a mix of frustration and relief. "Guess the universe has a sense of timing." He walked toward the door, hesitating before opening it. As he reached for the handle, I held my breath. Because whatever was waiting on the other side, I knew one thing for sure. After tonight, nothing between us would ever be simple again. The door opened to reveal a woman I didn't recognize, standing in the hallway light like she'd stepped out of a different story entirely. She was holding a small paper bag in one hand, her hair pulled back in a loose knot, rain still clinging to the ends of her coat. "Ethan?" she asked, her voice careful. Curious. He froze. For a second, I thought he might pretend he wasn't home. Instead, he stepped aside, letting her see me standing behind him in the living room, my heart still pounding from how close we'd come to something we hadn't named. "Hey," he said, "what are you doing here?" She hesitated, glancing between us. "You left your phone at the cafe." I tried calling it, but she lifted it slightly, like proof. I figured I'd just drop it off. My stomach twisted. Ethan took the phone from her, their fingers brushing. "Thanks." I didn't even realize. The silence that followed was thick, awkward, heavy with all the things none of us were saying. "I'm Maya," she finally offered, stepping inside a little, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be here. I forced a smile. My name felt strange on my tongue, like I was introducing myself in the middle of a scene I didn't understand. "I'm his roommate." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Roommate. The word echoed in my head, carrying a weight it hadn't before. Ethan cleared his throat. "Maya and we were supposed to hang out tonight. I kind of left." She laughed softly, but there was something tight about it. "Yeah." I noticed. I watched the way they stood near each other, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Almost. That word again. The same space that had been between Ethan and me just minutes ago. "I can go," Maya said, shifting her weight. I didn't mean to interrupt. Interrupt. The word hit harder than it should have. "No," Ethan said quickly. "It's fine. You can stay for a minute." I wasn't sure who he was saying that for. We all moved to the living room, the three of us sitting in a loose triangle that felt more like a standoff. The hum of the city outside seeped in through the windows, distant sirens, passing cars, life going on like nothing here was about to break. Maya's gaze drifted around the apartment, taking in the framed photos on the wall. Pictures of Ethan and me at the beach last summer, laughing, arms slung around each other like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You two look close," she said. My chest tightened. "We are." Ethan shifted in his seat. There was a pause, long enough for my thoughts to spiral. Did she see it? The tension, the thing we'd almost done. Or was it all just in my head, magnified by fear and want? Maya stood up. "I should probably go." Ethan stood too. "Let me walk you out." They moved toward the door, leaving me alone on the couch, staring at my hands. My fingers were still tingling from where his had touched mine. I clenched them into fists, trying to hold onto the feeling, even as I knew it was slipping away. The door opened. Cool air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and asphalt. I didn't mean to make things weird, Maya said softly. Ethan sighed. You didn't. I did. There was a pause. I couldn't hear everything they were saying, just the low murmur of their voices, the soft rhythm of something important happening out of reach. I stood up without realizing it, drifting closer to the hallway. Not close enough to intrude. Just close enough to listen. I like you, Maya said. The words landed in my chest like a stone. Ethan didn't answer right away. I just don't know what I'm doing, he finally said. I don't know what I want. Another pause. I don't want to be someone's confusion, she replied. Neither did I. The door closed gently behind her, the sound echoing through the apartment. Ethan leaned against it, eyes closed, like he needed the support to stay standing. For a moment, he just breathed, slow and heavy. I stood there, unsure whether to go to him or give him space. He opened his eyes and looked at me. Really looked at me. I hate this, he said quietly. I hate that I'm hurting people. Yeah. I replied. Me too. We stood a few feet apart, the space between us feeling wider than it had all night. I don't know what that was back there, he continued. With us. I don't know what it means. My throat tightened. Maybe it means something we're both scared to say. He rubbed his face, frustration etched into every line. Or maybe it means we're about to mess up a good thing. Neither of us had an answer. The apartment felt different now. Charged. Fragile. Like one wrong word could shatter what was left of our normal. Ethan turned away, walking toward his room. I need some air. Some space. Okay, I said, though every part of me wanted to stop him. He paused at his door, his hand resting on the handle. We can't just pretend this didn't happen. I know, I whispered. He disappeared into his room, the door closing softly behind him. I sank back onto the couch, staring at the empty hallway. The question that kept circling in my mind, refusing to settle, was the same one that had been there all along. When the morning came, would we still be pretending we were just roommates, or would everything finally come crashing into the light? Morning came in thin, pale lines of light that slipped through the blinds and landed on the wall like quiet accusations. I lay awake long before my alarm, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every look, every almost. The apartment felt different in the daylight. Smaller. Exposed. The kind of place where secrets didn't have many places to hide. I finally got up and moved to the kitchen, the floor cold under my bare feet. I made coffee out of habit, even though I didn't feel like drinking it. The sound of the machine felt too loud, like it was announcing my nerves to the whole building. Ethan's door stayed closed. That shouldn't have mattered, but it did. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around my mug, watching the steam rise and disappear. My thoughts kept drifting back to the hallway, to the way he'd looked at me before disappearing behind that door. Tired, conflicted, like he was carrying something too heavy for one night. The door finally opened. Ethan stepped out, hair still messy, eyes shadowed like he hadn't slept much either. He paused when he saw me, like he wasn't sure whether to come closer or turn around. Morning, he said. Morning, I replied. We stood there, a few feet apart, the space between us filled with everything we weren't saying. He walked to the counter and poured himself a cup of coffee. His hand brushed mine by accident, or maybe not. Neither of us moved it away right away. When we finally did, it felt like losing something all over again. I've been thinking, he said quietly. So have I. He let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh. Figures. Quote. We sat down across from each other, the small table suddenly feeling like a barrier instead of a place we used to share comfortably. His eyes searched my face, like he was trying to read something I hadn't decided to show yet. I don't want to hurt anyone, he said. Not you. Not Maya. I don't know how to be honest without breaking something. My chest tightened. Maybe it's already broken. The words hung there, fragile. He flinched, just a little. I don't want to lose you, he admitted. The confession landed softly but hit hard. I don't want to lose you either, I said. But I don't know how to keep pretending we're just what we were before. Silence settled between us again, not comfortable, not easy. The kind that makes you aware of every breath, every blink. Ethan stood up, pacing a few steps, then stopping by the window. He stared out at the street below, at people walking by, living their lives like everything was simple. Maybe we need time, he said. Space to figure out what this actually is. Or what it isn't, I added. He turned back to me. I don't want this to be a goodbye. Neither do I. But neither of us said it wasn't. There was a knock at the door. Both of us froze. Ethan and I looked at each other, the same thought flashing through both our minds. He hesitated, then walked to the door. His hand hovered over the handle, just like it had the night before. He glanced back at me. Whatever happens next, we don't have to decide it all right now. I nodded, even though my heart was pounding. He opened the door. I couldn't see who stood on the other side, only the shift in his expression as something new entered the room. And in that moment, I realized the question wasn't just who was standing in our doorway. It was this: when it finally closed again, would Ethan be walking back toward me, or away for good? The night air pressed against the windows like it was trying to listen in. Our apartment sat on the third floor of an old brick building that always smelled faintly of rain and dust, the kind of place where every sound echoed a little longer than it should. The ceiling fan hummed above me, slow and steady, cutting through the quiet like a metronome for my thoughts. Outside, the city glowed in scattered pockets of light, neon signs flickering in the distance, cars passing in soft, distant waves. I sat on the floor by the couch, back against the coffee table, pretending to read a book I hadn't turned a page in for 10 minutes. Ethan was in the kitchen. I could hear him moving around, cups clinking, the fridge opening and closing, the faint sound of water running. Ordinary sounds. Routine sounds. The kind we'd shared for months without thinking twice. But tonight, every noise felt louder, sharper, like my senses were tuned too high. I told myself I was imagining it. We were just roommates. Two people sharing space, sharing bills, sharing the kind of small, forgettable moments that add up to something comfortable. That's all this was supposed to be. Still, my chest felt tight. The smell of coffee drifted into the living room, warm and familiar. I closed my eyes for a second, breathing it in, letting it ground me. Ethan always made it too strong. He said it helped him think. I'd never told him I liked it that way. He walked past me, mug in hand, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. There was something there, not a look I could easily explain. Not a smile, not exactly. Just a pause, a hesitation. Like we were both standing at the edge of a sentence neither of us knew how to finish. "You're up late," he said. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Me neither." He sat down on the couch, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him through the thin air between us. My heart picked up its pace, traitor that it was. Why does this feel different tonight? The fan above us creaked softly as it turned. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. Life continued, indifferent to the small storm brewing in my chest. I wanted to say something normal. Something safe. Instead, I blurted, "Do you ever feel like this place is too quiet?" Ethan frowned slightly. "It's never quiet here. I mean, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something." He studied me for a moment, his grip tightening around his mug. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think I know what you mean." The room seemed to shrink around us. I shifted, suddenly aware of every movement, every breath. My thoughts tangled together, questions I didn't want to ask, answers I wasn't sure I could handle. This is just another night, I told myself. But the way Ethan looked at me, the way the city lights flickered through the window like a warning sign, made it feel like a lie. Somewhere deep down, a dangerous thought took shape. What if this wasn't just the start of another evening? What if it was the beginning of something we wouldn't be able to undo?